Hi, everybody. My name is Kelsey Barzias, and I'm a second year PhD student in the Higher Education and Student Affairs program. At the Dennis Learning Center, I am a graduate academic coach as well as an instructor for ESC PSY 1259. In this video series, we're going to talk all things note-taking strategies, but in this particular video, we're going to talk about why take notes? What's the big deal with doing that? So please stay tuned and enjoy what comes next. So you may be wondering, why develop note-taking skills? So note-taking skills do six major things amongst others. So number one, it promotes active listening. It improves your concentration and it gives you a purpose while in class. I don't know about you, but sometimes while I'm in class, I never really know what to do with my hands. And even though I should be paying attention, my mind definitely wanders. So when I note take, I actually have a purpose for being there to see if I can understand and absorb the information that the professor is sharing with me. It also provides an accurate record of information, so it's impossible to remember all that our professor tells us. So, note taking actually gives us a chance to recall that information in a better manner. Interestingly enough, you lose 50% of the information that you learn within 24 hours, 80% in 2 weeks, and 95% in a month. So, note taking is really going to help recall that information and allow you to review it so you don't lose that much of it. Number three, it helps you organize the information. So when you're taking notes, you're able to separate main ideas from support and structure the content in a meaningful way that is meaningful to you. That's a really important part. How some folks take notes is going to be vastly different than how you take notes, and that's okay. Number four is it provides additional repetition and reflection. You increase exposure to the material as you write down the information in a meaningful way, edit and revise your notes, and review them. Lastly, it helps with motivation and reduces boredom. So, as you all know, we're kind of in the Zoom session and in Zoom classes right now. But it's a really great chance to practice taking notes so that you can avoid boredom and you're actively engaging in the lecture in a very important way to help your mind from wandering. While it's really wonderful to develop note taking skills, it's also really important to make the most of note taking. So, here are some suggestions to help with that. So, first and foremost, before class, you want to preview the material and the related readings to what you'll be talking about in class. If a professor provides a PowerPoint or a lecture ahead of time, definitely go through and review it just so that you become familiar with the material. And have your note taking tools ready. So, just making sure you have those tools near you so that you're able to take notes in an efficient manner will be very helpful. During class, you want to write down key information. So don't copy word for word what the professor says. Instead, maybe add different things that the professor emphasizes or different areas that might be important for you to consider at a later time. You want to stay engaged. So more often than not, it's really important that you're listening, paying attention, because something that the professor says that's not included on a PowerPoint lecture, for example, you might miss. So stay engaged to make sure that the notes that you take are accurate and relevant to what the professor is speaking to. And you want to use abbreviations and ones that you actually understand. I don't know about you, but sometimes I look back at my notes and I'm like, what the heck did I write here? But, if I'm able to continuously practice using abbreviations that I understand, often that makes my note taking more efficient and I'm able to come to to better conclusions for my own sake. Finally, you really want to become an active listener. So that means put away distractions. And that's one of the hardest things, especially when we're in online classes now. Can you put your phone away, get rid of, any emails that are on your computer, or when you're in in-person lectures, make sure that you sit somewhere in the classroom that you are not going to be distracted. So I know some folks can't sit by a window because they end up looking out the window, or some people can't sit near their friends because they end up chatting about something. So just make sure that when you are taking notes, you're able to be an active listener by putting away distractions. You want to try to focus on the essence of the lecture. So maybe not so much the nitty gritty details, but instead you want to focus on the overall general theme of what's going on in the class. I would encourage relating the material to yourself or your future usefulness in some way. So if you're sitting in class and either your mind's starting to wander or you're having trouble focusing, potentially a way to stay engaged is thinking about how would this relate to my future self? Or how would my future self utilize this material? It's a really great way for motivation too, to say things like, okay, I know this information is going to be on my exam coming up. So my future self is really going to want to know this, even if I want to get distracted here. Another great thing to do is ask reflection questions to check if you're catching the main points. So, pausing at the end of taking notes, whether you're reading or in lecture, and in lecture it's a little more difficult. You don't always have the opportunity to pause, but especially when reading, pausing at the end of a paragraph or a page or a section and saying, what is really going on here? How can I apply this to the other information that I've learned in this course? How might I utilize this moving forward in a real life situation? And where might my professor use this in other areas of the class? And finally, make sure you've gotten enough sleep the night before. I know it sounds kind of simple, but note taking actually is a lot of engagement and it can be very tiring. So reducing that and becoming tired might be a really good way to help stay engaged in what you're doing and just focus overall. Once again, thanks so much for joining me for this video. In this video, we covered why it's important to develop note-taking strategies, making the most of note-taking, and becoming an active listener, all things that will enable you to become a better note-taker. So with that being said, stay tuned because we have a few more videos on note-taking in general.